Old, and I was in a group home. My baby sister and 5-year-old brother lived in foster care. I was told I may never see them again. I called the OCYA and talked to an intake worker. They were super friendly. From the first phone call, I felt safe. They acknowledged me and my concerns. The OCYA helped, and my siblings and I were able to stay connected. Let me tell you a little bit more about the OCYA and how they helped me because they might be able to help you too. The OCYA is an office independent from the government. It helps young people like you and me stand up for our rights. We are heard and respected because our opinions are valued. When I first met with my advocate, they asked me what I wanted and what was important to me. I felt like I was in charge, that I was actually leading the process. They even worked with my younger siblings so they could get the help they needed. Governments, courtrooms, and case conferences are places where you might feel powerless or uncertain. At first, I was so scared to speak up. I was worried I wouldn't be taken seriously or I would get into trouble somehow. But my advocate was right beside me, making sure my voice was heard. Everyone's situation is different. Maybe you have a court appearance coming up that will determine where you live or who you will live with. You have a right to have your opinion heard by the judge. An LRCY lawyer may be able to help. But the OCYA does more than just help during special circumstances. It examines those big picture issues that impact large numbers of young people all at once. Issues like the separation of siblings, access to mental health care, and the overrepresentation of Indigenous kids in care. That's called systemic advocacy, and it helps identify opportunities to improve services. The OCYA also works with youth and the community as a whole to teach about advocacy and children's rights. And there are lots of ways to get involved. What it comes down to is the OCYA is a safe place with really smart and understanding people who want to help. You can say anything knowing you will be heard and respected. Are you a young person who needs help or a supportive adult or caregiver who knows a child in need of advocacy? Contact the Office of the Child and Youth Advocate today. Even if you feel unsure, you can have someone call for you. It is important to remember that anyone can ask for help for a young person. Bye!
Okay, just going to switch over to some slides, also just to help me stay on track. Here we go. So it sounds like some of you have run into our office, interacted with our office at different times. Our office is unique in that, whereas I'm guessing from the list, I saw lots of people who work in the GOA, probably lots of workers, lots of people who are working with and on behalf of young people. Our office is unique in that we're one of the independent offices of the legislature. It talked about it in the video. So we also work under our own piece of legislation or law that spells out who we can work with in the province and even the types of work that we get up to. And so our legislation says we can represent the rights, interest, and viewpoint of young people receiving designated services. And it's young people who are receiving services or have a file with under the Child, Youth, and Family Enhancement Act, and as well young people who are seeking services from Children's Services and maybe have been denied and they'd like to challenge that refusal or see whether there's some options to try and get that decision reconsidered. The second group of young people we work with is young people involved with PSECA, the Protection of Sexually Exploited Children's Act. And then the third group is young people who are involved with the youth justice system. And so the young people we've worked with, or the young people we do work with, can be from brand new babies who are just born all the way up to the age of 24. And it's still 24 at this time because we've made the decision, or as part of all the transition that's happening with Children's Services in particular and their post-18 supports, we are continuing to serve all the young people who are under that TAP program, the Transition to Adulthood program. And so if they're involved with children's services, it can be all the way up to the age of 24. Youth justice, it's actually up to the age of 18. What else can I say? When we're talking about rights, really, it's all kinds of different rights that young people have. And I'll go into a couple of the ones that we focus on in a second. Another key thing to know about our office is lots of people are doing advocacy for young people, right? In your own personal life, in your whatever job you're doing. We occupy a unique space around advocacy in that we're not a decision maker. We're not playing any kind of guardianship role on behalf of a young person. Not that that role isn't very important, and that we always hope there is someone playing that role and actively involved in doing that advocacy and decision making. But our office and the staff and the work that we do, we're not doing any kind of decision making or guardianship activities. We're very clear on who we say we work for, in that who we work for is children and youth. They're our client. They're who we go to for direction in the advocacy work that we do. And so I always want to highlight our vision and our mission in that we really want, I guess our overall magic wand is that we really want to see young people succeed in their lives and communities, and whatever they define as success. Young people guide a lot of our work, and that's been historic. So I've been with Office almost 19 years. And if you work frontline in our office with young people, there's a young person on your hiring panel. And that's from even when I was hired. And that young person isn't just there sort of as a token to say we had a young person there. They're part of the panel, and they carry significant weight into whether you'll get a job in our office or not. And so we also have a youth advisory council made up of anywhere from 10 to 12 young people at any given time who have lived experience in one of the systems or more than one of the systems that we provide services in. So young people who are or have been involved with child welfare, young people involved with the justice system, their ages 14 to around 24, I think right now. There's quite a spread. And they do everything from advising us on our website to active advocacy work around issues they want to tackle. So I think in the last year, they've met with the Minister of Children's Services at different times. They also actually help with some of our other systemic work around sitting in on sort of parts of different investigative reviews, which I'll talk about. So young people are really actively involved in all kinds of the aspect of our work. Any questions? I'm going to do an awkward pause. I'm also going to say I'm a little rusty. I had a nice break over the summer, and I feel like I'm like, what do I say about that again? All right. Oh, I am going to go back just for a quick sec. Physically, just so people know, because I don't know if they know, if you know, physically, we have an office in downtown Edmonton and an office in downtown Calgary. But we are responsible to cover the province. And so we do a ton of travel. All of our staff go all over the province, including fly-in communities. So even if you work in more of a rural community, that doesn't necessarily mean that the young people that you're working with aren't within our scope. We will come to them. We do not expect young people to come to us. We will go to them wherever they're most comfortable. And I should highlight for youth justice, it really potentially could be from the moment a young person has interaction with a police officer, depending on what's going on, all the way through to charges, potentially incarceration, probation. It can be that whole continuum. The bulk of the work that we've done up till now, though, is with young people who are currently or have been incarcerated in one of the centers, Edmonton Young Offender Center or Calgary Young Offender Center. But we're really trying to explore how we can support more and more young people across that whole continuum of youth justice involvement around helping them know what their rights are and things like that. So I'm not sure how many of you in your work or and things think about sort of the different where children's rights come from, or specifically sort of what they are. A heavy piece, or one of the main key pieces that directs the work in our office actually, is the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, or the CRC. And our office actually came into existence connected to the UN CRC, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. So our office has been around in some form since 1989. And that is when Canada actually agreed and ratified and said that they would commit to upholding and working towards ensuring that all of the young person's rights under the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child are upheld. And children's rights under the UNCRC, if you really want to know what is a young person's right, think about, what does a child need to grow up to be healthy? What do you think? I actually ask kids this question too. What do you think kids need? You could even throw it in chat. My chat vanished, but I'll bring it back. Go ahead. Oh, a hand up, Sunshine?
Kids need to be loved and to feel safe and cared for.
Yep, absolutely. I see feel safe, relationships, identity, to be heard. Yep. So it's all of those things. And it's also like clean water, healthy environment, free from abuse, encouragement, given room to make mistakes. Yeah, absolutely. That discussion was happening at my island yesterday. And so I'll be very transparent. I actually started out in group care, what's now called campus care. And when I first started out over 20 years ago, there was no thought about sort of I was a decision maker for those kids. I never really thought about what was I doing around the decisions I was making to make sure that a young person's rights were still all being upheld. And especially in the world of children's services or the protection world, we're very heavily focused on safety. And don't get me wrong, safety is paramount. I am risk averse to the 100th degree. But while we're trying to keep kids safe, how are we trying to make sure that all of their other rights are still happening while we're doing that safety piece? Rights around identity, connection to culture, connection to family, significant people in their lives. I even think about, I worked in a residential facility. I didn't really think about the fact that the kids I was working with actually had a right to play, that I had a piece to play in making sure that was happening for kids, the kids I was caring for in their day or their week. And so I can, in the follow-up, I'll put some attachments to some different children, like simplified versions of the UNCRC. I encourage you to have a look at it. It really is sort of how we ground our work around advocacy. And advocacy, actually, if advocacy is happening, it's because someone isn't getting what they need. And rights are often basic needs, if that makes sense. You have the right to safe shelter. You have the right to food, healthy food, and all of those things. And so often if advocacy is happening and someone's advocating for something, it's because they're just not getting what they need, some of their basic rights. If also children's rights are weaved into all kinds of different laws and pieces of legislation that impact young people here in the province and federally. So if you look at the Youth Criminal Justice Act, you can actually see some of the rights that are in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child weaved into that piece of legislation. There's language about having a right to not be treated in a cruel and unusual and harmful way, as well as the current legislation in Alberta. The provincial legislation, the Child, Youth and Family Enhancement Act, has lots of these rights that are listed out in the UNCRC built into the Child, Youth and Family Enhancement Act around participation, around safety and all of those things. Any questions? I'm in an awkward pause for a sec. There's lots of other rights documents as well that impact young people and all of the different rights documents are actually made to work together. They're not made to conflict with each other. They have a lot of themes throughout them. One of them is participation, is a huge theme through all kinds of the different rights documents and conventions and declarations. Another one that we focus quite heavily on in our work is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP, some people call it, in really focusing sort of on young people's rights to connection, culture, identity. And our office is really trying to weave throughout our work how to support the young people we work with in being connected to their communities and their culture, as well as our provincial advocate has been very clear that she supports communities' inherent right to make decisions for the children in their communities. So with, I don't know how many of you are seeing sort of the changes that are happening around the new laws that different communities are now putting in place and taking back decision making for the children that are currently been served in child welfare or served under the provincial child welfare laws, that more and more communities are taking back that autonomy and decision making for the children from their communities. I don't know, have that many people. I don't know if you want to put a hand up or, so we're it was called BLC 92. Now the Act Respecting First Nation, Métis, Inuit Children. Sorry, I don't have it up. I keep wanting to still call it Bill C-92. And so we're seeing lots of change even in our work around more and more communities sort of pursuing that and moving forward, which is really exciting. So what is our day-to-day advocacy work? I'm going to walk through some of our different areas and then talk about sort of what advocacy looks like. And then I have actually a couple videos connected to some of the different areas. And I should have asked, do you guys usually take a break partway through these sessions, or it's straight through for the hour and a bit? I don't know if Manish is still here. No one knows. We'll keep going for a bit and see where we get.
Erin, we'll take a break at 10:45.
Oh, so perfect.
10:45 to 11, we'll take a break, and then we have from 11 to 11:30.
Perfect. Thank you. I thought that, but wanted to make sure. So really quick, so we actually in our office have a referral intake process. We have a group of people who are intake workers. They're there during Monday to Friday, but really if a young person needed to talk to us outside of those hours, we really make efforts to make that happen. Our office does do an assessment around whether we have a role in our when we do take intake. So anyone can call our office. With older young people, and I hesitate to put an age on it because we don't put an age on it. Because the young people are our clients, we can't work on their behalf without their consent and their involvement. So for example, a 12-year-old who maybe the referral is because they really disagree where their caseworker has said they have to live. Maybe it's a group home. And so we've gotten a call that this young person's being pretty clear that they disagree with that decision. For that 12-year-old, if they can express that, we would need to talk to them first, talk to them about, is that your concern? Would you like the help of an advocate before we could ever become involved? Another piece of our intake actually is we get lots of calls from all over about all kinds of issues to do with young people. And we don't have a scope to provide services to all young people in the province. For example, family law. We don't have a legal scope to assist young people where there is some kind of an issue happening in family law. And so part of what our intake does is try to give anyone who calls our office information on options they have, who to go to, different options they can try and do to advocate for whatever issue or concern they're having, whether it be a young person who's calling us who doesn't happen to be in our scope, or an adult. So we're always trying to support people around young people with school sort of tools and information so they can also go and advocate for those young people, if that makes sense. Any questions? All right. So one piece of the advocacy work that our office does actually is, our legislation spells this out quite clearly, is we are tasked, and this is probably one of the hardest parts of the work that our office has to do. We're tasked with investigating the serious injury or death of any young person who passes away while they're involved with child intervention or child welfare, or the youth justice system. And there's some caveats to that. We have to do an investigation or a review if a young person was involved with children's services, maybe their file closed, but within 2 years, something happens. Those situations also fall under our umbrella. And with justice, it's if a young person is in some form of custody. So closed custody at like the Edmonton Young Offender Center, or open custody. And there's a number of different review processes out there. So it can get confusing for people sometimes because there can be fatality inquiries as well. And the provincial government has their own internal review system built into children's services. And so ours are specific in that the intent of our reviews is not to find a particular person to lay blame. We're not looking at anything to do with a criminal matter. We're really looking at, was there something happening systemically in a system that if we make recommendations to different government bodies, hopefully we can prevent that circumstance from happening in the future or improve services going forward. All of our reviews are available online with all of the recommendations to different government bodies. And we've also now, because we have to do some kind of review on all of the circumstances that fall under our purview, we've also been in a position where we've released some reports that are almost like public assurance reports, where we've said, actually, all of the different sort of groups that were involved with this young person were doing all of the things they could, and we really have no recommendations in this circumstance. In regards to our investigations, I don't think, if most of you work somewhere in the field, this will come as a shock. They're the biggest numbers we've ever seen. Lots of themes around mental health supports opiate poisoning, and yeah, and then suicide. Those are like the big sort of themes. And we do see some interesting other things. So I know, and I'll talk about it more on our systemic side, out of doing our investigations and then some of our individual advocacy work, but I think where it really sort of started to show itself was in the investigations, was all these concerns around supports for young people with disabilities and the tie-in to sort of young people ending up passing away and all kinds of things. So we're doing some more systemic work around there. I hope you never end up interacting with our office in relation to an investigation, but if you do work with young people and something does happen, our investigators try and speak to anyone who was working with that young person as well as their family. And we can access information from lots of different government bodies. Our legislation allows us to access information and records from any public body. And so that's part of our sort of investigative process. And then anything we release is public. We also currently, our legislation prevents us from identifying a young person. So any of our reports have a pseudonym. Whenever possible, we try to have the family pick the pseudonym. Yeah, any questions about investigations? All right. Another piece of advocacy work we do, I'll talk about this and then I'll show a quick video, is our office under our legislation, we can provide legal representation to young people. And this is where we get a little, we do get confusing. On one side, part of the group of young people that is under our purview is young people involved with youth justice. When it comes to our legal appointments and our lawyers, we can appoint for any kind of court matter going before the courts under the Child, Youth, and Family Enhancement Act, the provincial child welfare legislation, or PSECA. But we don't appoint lawyers for any kind of criminal matter. So anything to do with needing legal representation for youth justice, that still goes through legal aid. Our legal, our LRCY program, there is no cost to young people. So there isn't circumstances where they turn 18 and we're asking for them to pay some kind of bill. There's no cost for young people. The lawyer really is there to represent that young person, not any of the adults around that young person, to try and help a young person, depending on their age, know what the process is in court, what's going to happen, what their options are, and to bring their voice into the proceedings. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to back out and pop up the LRCY video. We have a pretty good video and I'm hoping it plays. Sorry, it's a newer one. And so I'm hoping that it will be kind to me today. Oh, what has happened? Sorry. There's a lot of screens open today. Sorry. Obviously, I'm not keeping this very clean. Okay. Where's my video? There we go. Sorry, I just got to get it up behind the scenes. There we go. And then find my way back to you guys. Here we go. Okay. And this one's about 7 minutes. So a little longer, but good. Just going to give it just a sec to make sure it loads up onto everyone's screen. And here we go. Please, I'll pop up my chat. If something happens with the sound, please let me know. I think it should be
I was
good.
adopted into a family when I was young, and that situation for me just didn't prove to be like the most healthy. So I wanted to become a ward of the government. And so when I was looking for some sort of standing for that, I went with, a lawyer for my PGO to kind of ensure that I had somebody like in my court.
For young people involved in the child intervention system, some of the most important decisions that happen in their lives occur at court. Things like where the young person is going to live, who they're going to live with, and how often they get to see the people that they love. Young people have the right to have their voices heard in these important decisions, and the legal representation program helps that happen by having a lawyer appointed to meet with the young person and present the young person's instructions to the court, where the judge will make the decision.
These are people who are well trained in terms of dealing with child legal representation and are very familiar with matters of the welfare of children that are in front of the courts. They are passionate about their work, and they really care about the young people that they serve. And so they represent all of those interests of young people to the court and make it so that the court understands what that young person's real interests are.
I'm a practicing lawyer, and my role is to meet with children, to bring some certainty to what is usually a chaotic, frightening experience in their personal lives.
The proceedings are all about them. They are the subject of the proceedings. So not only are they a party to the proceedings, but they're the most important party. And certainly most young people do have an opinion about what they would like to see happen to them. Now, they may not get exactly what they want in the end, because it is the judge who makes the final decision. But just like every other party in the proceedings, they have a say.
I was treated like I was an adult, because at that point I was making adult decisions for my life. So he made me feel like I had like a part to play, if that makes sense. It wasn't even just him solely there like representing me. He like included me in that whole process, which was really a huge benefit to me.
A young person can expect firstly sort of an introductory phone call and meeting to find out what is important to them about where they live, who they visit, and other circumstances surrounding the proceedings. The lawyer will keep the young person informed as to what is going on with the court, what is going on with negotiations, and what direction the file may or may not be going in. Once the judge has made a final decision, the lawyer touches base with the client and explains what has happened.
Being able to like go step by step with him and like understand the whole process, like he made me feel comfortable and safe in that circumstance, because I knew everything that was happening. It wasn't just like thrown into a circumstance that you've never experienced before. So here's the whole plan laid out, right? That gave me a lot of like comfort, I think. It was a very stressful time in my life, so for me to have that like support was definitely crucial for like my circumstances and like representing myself well as well.
The information that our LRCY lawyers provide to the court is something that the courts value too. It's something that they really consider, and so the importance of those lawyers and of young people accessing those lawyers just can't be overstated. It's really, really important.
The most important person on the file is the child, and it's really important as a judge for me to understand a little bit about the child, a little bit about the history, a little bit about the challenge that the child is facing now, to be able to make an informed decision. And so we're always interested as judges to listen to counsel for the children, tell us how they're doing and what they need. Each of the parties have an opportunity to talk. I hear from the director, I hear from counsel for the guardians, and I hear from counsel for the kids. And so the process allows me to get the perspective of each of the players. And if I didn't have counsel for the kids, I wouldn't have that independent voice. And so that's the important part for me.
I ended up getting granted a PGO when I went through that process, and like he just explained to me what that would look like, which gave me some security, I guess, and gave me some like relief to like have that explained, because for a while it was just a big question mark of what was going to happen, right? So especially at that age, you're a fresh teen to go through like something like that is quite scary.
I'm really proud of this program. We have a number of lawyers who represent young people throughout the province of Alberta. Each one of them is passionate about young people. They are working with our program and working with our young people because they would like to contribute to the young person's success. They would like to see the young person empowered through this program and more informed about the rights. I have a lot of confidence in the work that our lawyers do, and I truly believe in this program.
You will experience frightening and stressful times that will shake your confidence. This department, LRCY, exists for you. It is something that you can reach out to, and people will hear you, they will accept you, and they will support you through that journey.
Sometimes when there are processes that are in place where young people don't understand quite what's going on around them, and they think that their role is not important to that process, our lawyers are there to help them to understand that what these young people want is really important to the process. And making that visible is one of the most important things a young person can do.
I can only speak from my experience, but I wouldn't have been, the woman that I am today without the help of the LRCY and frankly the OCYA. So it's really great to be able to have that resource. It was a monumental moment for me in my life. Like, it was a turning point for sure, and I feel like I became the person that I am today because of that very moment, right? So it was definitely a beautiful experience.
Okay. Hopefully that played okay. Just seeing the time, I don't know, Manisha, do you think this is a good time to take